Right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, folks, it's not a massive group, so the thing is, if it's not a bigger group, if it's a small group, you have to work harder, yeah? To make me think that's a big group, so you have to be louder, okay? So, so if someone says good afternoon to you, it's polite to say good afternoon back. That's the first thing, okay? Second thing is, only one person should be miserable here, and that person's me, because I'm working. On a day off, you're on holiday, you pulled a sickie, one of the three, so you should be really, really happy. So try and perk me up slightly. I'd rather be asleep on my sofa, folks, okay? So try and perk me up slightly, okay? If you don't perk me up, this is how the tour's going to go. It's a nice tower. Yeah, so let's try this one again, okay? Good afternoon!
Good afternoon!
Better. Welcome to His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress, the Tower of London. The Tower of London, which is a World Heritage Site. My name is Yeoman Warder Gary Thine. For the next 45-50 minutes or so, I'm going to take you on a tour of the tower. I'll point out some more historic buildings and I'll tell you something of their history. Before we begin though, there are some health and safety points, okay? First couple rows of you, you're going to feel some precipitation falling upon you. You may think it's coming from the sky, it might well be, but more than likely it's going to be coming from this area. Okay, do not worry about it. I'm fully vaccinated, you're perfectly safe. Or so they say. On a serious note, folks, there's one person who knows if it's raining on this tour, okay? That person's me! I will tell you if it's raining, okay? If you feel a solitary water drop tap on your cheek, that doesn't mean it's raining. Don't try and put your umbrellas up at that point, folks. If you put an umbrella up, what happens is, then I think it's raining, then the tour gets cancelled, okay? We don't want that to happen, do we? No, we don't, okay? So I will tell you when it's raining, okay? And it really needs to be raining for me to stop a tour. All right, good on that? Yeah. Cool, excellent. Right, as well, the people in the front row there as well, okay? I wave my arms wildly sometimes when I'm talking about the tower because I get really excited. If I strike you, it's because you're standing too close to me. Come in closer. Right, folks, also, if you've brought any children here today, and yes, I can see a few in the audience, okay? Bad things have happened in and around the Tower of London. I will be talking about some of those bad things. Sometimes in graphic detail. Your children will love it, okay? But, if you are super sensitive on behalf of your child, then take them away now. You have been warned. So where's the story begin? The story begins way back in the year 1066. William, Duke of Normandy, who was better known as William the Conqueror, defeated the Anglo-Saxon King Harold at the Battle of Hastings. William was crowned King William I of England on Christmas Day of that same year, but he had to continue to fight his Saxon subjects who did not take too kindly to Norman domination. Now, William was looking for somewhere to impress and overawe the citizens of London. He chose a site just inside the eastern city wall where a Roman fort had once stood. In 1078, he authorised the building of his first royal palace and fortress in England. Today we refer to it as the White Tower, and it is situated behind those buildings. Do not bother looking, it's behind those buildings. Over the next 200 years, successive monarchs continued to add to the defences. The inner ballium, or defensive wall, containing 13 smaller towers, was completed around 1220. This outer wall was completed in 1280, and it contains 6 further towers, all of which are facing south to defend against an attack should it come from the river. Now to the north are 2 strong bastions known as Brass and Legs Mount, inside and on top of which would have been mounted cannon. Boom! To defend the tower against attack from that direction. Now another part of the defensive system was the moat, which we were all stood in. This was dug during the reign of King Edward I, and it was once filled with water. The moat was some 120 feet wide, and when fully excavated, it was 15 feet deeper than it is today. And it was designed to use the tidal flow of the River Thames. Twice a day, it would wash in and around the moat, and it would flush it clean. Now, this system worked rather well at first, but with all the rubbish and the excrement, that's poo, kids, directed into it from the dirty city and the wide drains of Houndditch and Shoreditch, that system soon failed and became the largest cesspit in London, a source of pestilence to all those who lived nearby, especially the soldiers of the Tower garrison. that has continued for a very short period of just 500 years. Yeah, so it took them 500 years to figure out they were getting sick because of the giant open-air toilet on their doorstep. So, in 1843, the then Constable of the town, the Duke of Wellington, asked permission from Queen Victoria to have the moat drained. Thankfully, it was granted, and the Duke had it filled with sand and shingle to the level it is today, putting it to good use as an exercise area and parade ground for his troops in the Tower garrison. As I said earlier, this was the first royal palace in fortress of its kind to be built by the Normans in this country. Over the years, however, it has been used in many other ways. It was a citadel to command and defend the city of London. The crown jewels in royal regalia have been stored here since 1303. The Royal Mint was located within our walls where all the coins of the realm were produced. It was the site of the first Royal Observatory studying the stars and the planets until it was moved to Greenwich in the 17th century. It was an armoury for the storage of warlike stores and provisions. Official records and papers of the King's and Queen's courts were stored here until they were moved to Kew in the middle of the 19th century to form the Public Records Office. The royal collection of exotic animals and royal beasts were held here in the Royal Menagerie or Zoo until 1835 when they were all moved to Regent's Park to form what we now know as London Zoo. And yes! We did have lions and tigers and bears. Oh my indeed. And last but by no means least, this must rank as the most famous prison complex in history. A place of murder, torture and executions. Now talking of executions, there's a place that stands at the top of the hill. It is called Trinity Green and it stands in an area known as Tower Hill. And that was the site of numerous executions between the 14th and 18th centuries. And over the years, no less than 125 men of noble birth were to lose their heads up there by means of the blocking axe. The first victim was Simon Sudbury, Archbishop of Canterbury, who was murdered up there at the hands of peasants in 1381 for daring to introduce a poll tax. 7 years later was the first legal execution on Tower Hill, and it was of Sir Simon Burley, Knight of the Garter. And by remarkable coincidence, the last victim in 1747 was another Simon. Simon Fraser, the Lord Lovett, 80-year-old Scottish lord who supported the Second Jacobite Rebellion led by Bonnie Prince Charlie in 1745. Now, is anybody here called Simon? Because I'd leave now, Simon. Right, just for a moment, we're going to pause. We're going to imagine the scene up there on the day of execution. Now, thousands of people would have gathered around a raised wooden platform, the scaffold, to witness the proceedings. There would have been much merriment. Alcohol may have been consumed. It would have been an action-packed, fun day out for the whole family. Yeah. Now, the crowd, they would have been extremely loud. They would be jeering and cheering. They would want to witness this spectacle. Having delivered his final speech and said his prayers, the condemned man would place himself down, his neck resting on a block of oak. He would then give a word or a signal, and the executioner would bring down his axe, hopefully beheading his victim with one stroke. The executioner would then pick up the severed, still bleeding head and hold it aloft for all to see. Special effects, folks. Yeah. And he would loudly proclaim, "Behold, the head of a traitor, so die all traitors! God save the king! Hurrah!
Hurrah! That would be the king back. That'll work. Hurrah! Hurrah!
Right, folks, do you remember that a good afternoon was a bit of a failure on your part? Do you remember that? Do you remember that? Do you remember just now I said the crowd? Do you remember me saying the crowd? Nod at me if you remember it. I said it. Should all be nodding. Yeah, I said the crowd. Then I did this. It was like a sweeping pointing gesture, wasn't it? At you. the crowd. You see where I'm going with this? Yeah, so the crowd, pointy, 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 pointy. Then I said it would be extremely loud, they would be jeering and cheering, they would want to witness this spectacle. Do you remember me saying that? Or would you like me to text it to you? Would that be easier, would it? Well, what that was, folks, it was a hint of what I expected afterwards. It should have been a deafening almighty cheer. Now, some of you did pick up on that hint, but quite frankly, you were mediocre at best. So, we're going to try it again. It's called audience participation, okay? You've paid for your ticket, you're inside, you might as well try to enjoy yourselves, okay? All right, now what's going to happen is I'm going to do my speech about the head, then I'm going to do this, then you're going to cheer at the top of your lungs, aren't you? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Now, you can just cheer, you can say hurrah, you can say God save the king. If there are any Americans amongst you and you want to say yeehaw, I will not be offended, okay? So let's try it again. The executioner pick up the seven steel bleeding head, holding aloft on sea, loud proclaim, behold, dead of traitors, so all traitors. God save the king! God save the king! No better. The head would then be impaled onto a pike and carried through the streets of London to London Bridge, which in those days was the only bridge across the River Thames. The head would be left displayed above the gateway entrance as a sign of the fate that would await all would-be traitors. And yes, I'm pointing in that direction to London Bridge because that is where you will find London Bridge. That bridge around the corner with the towers, that's right next door to the Tower of London. Strangely enough, it's called Tower Bridge. Now who could get those two bridges confused?
Americans!
Go to Arizona, you will find out. Come on. The headless corpse will be taken down, placed into a small handcart and brought back inside the tower and will be quickly buried in an unmarked grave in the Chapel Royal of St. Peter ad Vincula. Now, we're going to make that same journey, folks. We're going to go through an archway over there, okay? As we go through the archway, I want you to look up. Not yet! Over there! You see the spikes of a portcullis, a medieval drop gate that weighs over 1.5 ton. It dates from 1326 and the rope holding it up also dates from 1326. So we're going to be walking quickly. You may also notice 3 circular holes drilled through the stonework above your heads. They are known as murder holes. Probably just used by the defenders of that tower to empty waste buckets into a cart, all members of the public as they pass beneath. People still live in the top of the tower. I do not know if the waste bucket's empty or full. I'm going to be walking quickly. Now make a gap and I'll lead you in. It means get out of my way. Come in through, folks, come in through. You know where we're going, I've just told you. Let's start walking, come on.
You guys see when he stops,
He yelled, look out. Isn't that funny?
there's just a rope holding.
Yeah, he said there's a rope holding, like, the gate that used to, like, cover this door, yeah. Sorry. Bailey, it's okay. Come back. Okay, you can see him. Okay, we can go over on that side if you want. On this side.
Come on, folks, here for a good time, not a long time. You're okay, you're good. Right, the longer it takes for you to get into the back there, the more of this I have to drink. It's full of gin. I'm on 3rd bottle, folks, okay? The group looks really massive at the moment. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers.
Chug.
That's right, I don't need encouragement. But it's good though, it's good.
Just wanted to make sure you knew we were
It's delicious, thank you. Right, folks, the reason I drink gin while taking a guided tour, okay, is because, as you can see, we have no vocal aids. Just what we can produce, folks, okay? And I need to keep my throat lubricated, okay? Gin is the best thing for that, okay? Also, gin is one of your 5 fruit and vegetable portions that everybody should be having each and every day, okay? Gin is made from juniper berries. Berries are indeed a fruit. There you go. That there is science fact, okay? Obviously, it would be highly unprofessional of me to drink gin while taking you on a guided tour. So before anybody goes onto the internet and starts to complain, it's not full of gin, it is full of water, and it's mixed with gin. We're now standing in what is known as the outer ward of the Tower of London. That is to say, we're between the inner and the outer balliums, or defensive walls. Now, the inner wall, it stands 50 feet high in certain parts. The outer one behind you is 28 feet thick in certain parts. Down there is Mint Street, where all the coins in the realm were designed and produced until 1810. Now, the buildings which house the mint are known as the casemates, or houses within the wall. And not only serve as a museum, which you can go into over there, but they also serve as accommodation for myself, some of my Yeoman Warder colleagues, and our families. Yes, as Yeoman Warders of the Tower of London, we do get the privilege of living here. And yes, you guessed it. It is awesome! I know. Right over there is a tall, narrow archway. It's known as the Sally Port or the Royal Entrance, beyond which there is a small drawbridge leading out to the King's Stairs, directly accessing the River Thames. Now, rather than travel through the dark, dirty, dangerous streets of London, royalty and nobility were travelling impressive barges along the river. They would tie up alongside those stairs and gain access through that archway, which is original and it dates back more than 700 years. It was at that very archway that King Henry VIII so lovingly greeted his second wife, Anne Boleyn, on the eve of her coronation in 1533. But poor Anne was fated to return to the Tower just 3 years later. For a very different reason. Yeah. Through a very different gate. Now this! It's the Bell Tower, yeah? So who can tell me then, it's a difficult one, why it's called, are you ready for this? The Bell Tower.
because there's a bell.
Give him a chance!
Because there's a bell.
Because there's a bell in it!
Yay, Bailey!
Right inside the white belfry on the top contains the oldest surviving curfew bell in the City of London. When it was sounded an alarm, that would have been the signal to close all the gates, lower the portcullis, man the battlements for defence. The bell tower is the strongest of the 13 on the inner wall. Due to its form of construction, it is obvious that prisoners were held within this tower. A man for all seasons, Sir Thomas More, Lord Chancellor of England, was held for 15 months in the lower chamber for refusing to accept King Henry VIII as supreme head of the Church of England. He was to say, I am the King's good servant, but God's first. At the same time, for the very same reason, his good friend John Fisher, Bishop of Rochester, was held in the upper chamber. And both men were to suffer terribly, but neither could be persuaded to abandon their Catholic beliefs, so they were finally led out through those gates and up onto Tower Hill, where they were both publicly beheaded as traitors in the summer of 1535. Now, James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, eldest of the 13 illegitimate children of King Charles II, the Happy King, was also imprisoned in this tower. After the death of his father in 1685, this handsome and popular young man, very much like myself, was persuaded to stake his claim to the throne by virtue of his uncle James II being a Roman Catholic. Now, to press home his claim, he landed from exile in the West Country of England and he marched inland, gathering popular Protestant support in what became known as the Pitchfork or the Monmouth Rebellion. Now, the revolt was crushed at the Battle of Sedgemoor on the 6th of July, 1685, but James Scott escaped the battlefield. He evaded capture for a week till he was found hiding in a ditch near the town of Ringwood. Condemned to death in his absence, there was no need for a trial, and so 3 days later he was led out and up onto Tower Hill. And that was to be one of the most botched and bloodiest executions ever to have taken place in English history. The executioner, Jack Ketch, used 5 strokes of his axe to dispatch his victim. And even then, the head remained stubbornly attached to the body. So Ketch pulls his butcher's knife from his belt and he proceeds to cut through the remaining skin, tissue and sinew, blood spraying across his face and down his hand, making the knife slippery. He continues to slice through the flesh. Slicing! 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 Are we there yet? Slicing finally removed the head from the body, but strangely, both the body and the head were brought back inside the tower where they were sewn back together before burial in the chapel wall of St. Peter ad Vincula. Now, the reason for this, he was the eldest son of a king, and they'd forgotten to get a royal portrait of him. So, they stitched his head back onto his body, they dressed him in regalia, and then they propped him into a chair. And they commissioned an artist to paint his portrait, which still hangs in the National Portrait Gallery. And it's also believed that the artist did say, this was the best sitting he had ever taken. Enough of this blood and gore. We must, beheading! Oh, folks, that's as good as it's gonna get. Right, let's get around the corner of the Traitor's Gate in a bloody tower. Make a gap, use your elbows, because I will. I won't use my elbows, folks, it'll be an elbow-free zone, elbow-free zone.
He gets to live here. This would be cool.
Yeah, that's awesome that he gets to live here.
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe give me the dad. You're feeling pretty heavier now.
It's not a super child appropriate tour, you're right. Look, he took his hat off up there.
Right on the river. Where are you?
How you doing, all right? All good? How you doing, all right? All right? Good, yeah? No, we don't do high fives here. It's beneath me. I'll do fist bumps, yeah, fist bumps are good. There you go, it's better. Arm at work, Someone put a bit of pizzazz in it, yeah? See, it's gone, ready? Pizzazz. See, it's better, isn't it? See, brilliant. No, I'm not doing any. Oh, come on. You want one on this side? No? Right, Americans here? Yes. Oh, I was just about to say you're very quiet, but okay. Fair one. Any Canadians? Yeah. There you go. Cool. That's better. Yeah. Cool. She's not. All right. I think she is. It's okay. It's fine. Anyone from Bolivia? Okay, right, the reason I say that, folks, okay, it was a few weeks ago now. I had a group of slightly larger than this and slightly more responsive than you. And I said, anyone from Bolivia? Thinking there'd be no one from Bolivia here. And there were two separate couples, either side, two separate couples. And they went, yes! Yes! Woo! Woo! And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And I thought that's how it should be done. That is how it should be done, folks, okay? That being said, then, if anyone's from the next place, then obviously you need to pull out your A game and you need to be nice and loud for me. Don't be one of those people that just goes... or it just goes, yeah. I come from there. Okay, don't be that person. Just be, be proud of where you come from. It's awesome. Okay? Just wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. Words. I'm building up the humour. Any Australians? Hey, that's it. That's what it's all about, isn't it? That's what it's all about. Hey, we're all happy with that. Hey, welcome back. Oh, thank you, Lord, thank you. And what usually follows there is people go, oh, he didn't just say that, did he? Yes, he did just say that. It's all good. Anyway, okay, any Europeans? Any Europeans? Here we go. Hey. Any British? Yeah! Anybody say yes twice then? Oh, controversial. There we go. Anybody from Monarch? No, the rest of the planet. Yeah, come on, yeah! That's the remainder of you, isn't it? Unless you come from a galaxy far, far away. And in which case... It's all you're going to remember. It's all you're going to remember. I went to the Tower of London. It was really old. He did a Wookiee impression. Boom. Right. We're now standing at the world famous, should I say, infamous Traitor's Gate, built on the orders of King Edward I because it required a safer, more useful entrance into the tower. Now, rather than travel for the narrow and twisting streets of London where convoys could be attacked, stores stolen, or prisoners set free, he decided to use the River Thames as a highway. At high tide, a boat could pass through that gate and could unload its cargo in safety. Therefore, that gate was originally known as the Watergate. And yes, Americans, we had it before you. Yes. And ours is a lot leaks than yours did. There we go. Right, originally known as the Watergate, how did it become known as Traitor's Gate? Well, the name, it's not a question, I'm just talking. The name change occurred during the Tudor period due to the large numbers of alleged traitors that entered this formidable fortress through those grim gates, among them no less than 3 Queens of England. Queen Anne Boleyn, Queen Catherine Howard, and Lady Jane Grey, the 16-year-old uncrowned queen of only 9 days. Now these and many more poor, unfortunate souls would have travelled from their trials. They would have passed through those grim gates and land at these very steps, where they were met by the yeoman jailer and an escort of extremely handsome yeoman warders, be taken through the bloody tower archway behind you to their cell or dungeon to await whatever fate had in store for them. And for some, it was a short journey to their places of execution. So behind you then is the infamous Bloody Tower, originally known as the Garden Tower, because it overlooked and it gave access to the Lieutenant's Garden. Its name was changed to the Tower of Blood, or Bloody Tower, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, to commemorate the terrible tragedies that have taken place within. Perhaps the most terrible tragedy of all is the alleged murders of the 2 boy princes in 1483. The 12-year-old, uncrowned King Edward V and his 9-year-old brother, Richard, Duke of York, were brought into the tower by their kind and loving uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, for their own safety. and in order to prepare for the coronation of the eldest boy. But as soon as their kind and loving uncle got the boys into the tower, he went to Parliament. He declared them illegitimate, and he took the throne himself, becoming King Richard III. Now, the sightings of both of those boys gazing through that upper window, playing in the tower grounds, became less and less frequent until they disappeared altogether. Now, it's believed by some, not everybody, but by some, that they were murdered in that upper chamber by suffocation with a pillow. Their little bodies bundled down the staircase and hidden beneath a pile of stones. The next day, they were secretly buried by an unknown priest underneath the staircase on the south side of the White Tower, where they remained undisturbed for 191 years, until workmen found a large crate containing the remains of 2 children. Experts of the day did indeed declare these were the bodies of the 2 boy princes. So on the orders of King Charles II, they were placed into an urn designed by Sir Christopher Wren and buried in Innocents' Corner, Westminster Abbey. And in the 1980s, they were exhumed and they were tested. They were not tested for DNA, but they were tested. They were aged, they were sexed, and the way they had died. And then they were re-interned, folks. A lot of controversy about those 2 boy princes, okay? Is it actually them? Were they murdered? Were they banished? Who had them murdered? Who had them banished? Folks, nobody knows what happened, okay? Because it's history. You read both sides of the argument and you make an informed decision, because that's what we do, okay? What we do know are the facts, okay? Richard took the throne before they disappeared. That changed the line, okay? Yeah? Now in 1485, Richard was defeated at the Battle of Bosworth. Today, back then, okay? The last king of England to be defeated in battle, okay? And then Henry VII took over as the first Tudor king. That then changed the line. Everything else is speculation, folks, because we do not know. We were not there, okay? Right, oh, hold on. There's one person who knows what happened to those 2 boys, okay? One solitary person, okay? But at the moment, that person's flying around time and space in a blue police call box. Right, make a gap, folks. We're going to go through the archway, straight up the lane and straight up the steps. Let's think of it as history, physical education, all rolled into one. Coming through, folks, coming through. That was a Doctor Who quip, by the way.
Doctor Who quip. Doctor Who is a show.
Sorry.
Up you go.
Okay, where's Bailey?
Talk amongst yourselves, folks, while the stragglers are just working out how to get their feet up a bit quicker. Come on, folks, it's good for you. Get your steps in. Just thinking of you. You're good? You're good? Yeah? Good. Excellent. Just trying to figure out your t-shirt. Is that your dog?
Various dogs.
Various dogs. Okay.
Various stages of puppyhood.
Oh, that's cool. I like it. That's cute. I usually look out for musical t-shirts on small children. Not that I like looking at small children with musical t-shirts on, folks. What usually happens is a small child will walk past with a Ramones t-shirt on, and I go, "Hey, Ramones, hey ho, let's go," and they'll go. No idea what you're talking about. Don't wear the t-shirt then. Sell them in mainstream shops now, don't they? Sell them in mainstream shops. It's just wrong. It's wrong. Well, in my opinion, anyway. My opinion's wrong. Right. Anyway, so come in a bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit more. Come on. So that's enough. Right. If anybody's tempted to turn around and take pictures of a bridge, folks, I'm just going to tell you now, it's just a bridge. Okay, that's all it is. It's a bridge. All right. In fact, it's quite a new bridge. It's quite a new bridge, folks. Okay. It's just a bridge. At the end of the day, pedestrians and vehicles go across it. It's a very nice bridge, granted, but if you are tempted to turn around and take a picture of that bridge, I'm going to give you my top tip of the day about that bridge. Okay, this is my top tip of the day about that very bridge. Okay, top tip. It's going to be there all day! I am not. Right, we're now standing what is known. How you doing? You all right? We're now standing what is known as the inner ward of the Tower of London. Watch these people in a minute. Just watch them. The inner ward of the Tower of London. Actually, we stood near Tower Green, which is our village green. Now, unlike many village greens, may have a duck pond or a mill pond, or even a cricket pitch or a playground, we have something quite unique. Our very own. Wait for it. Are you ready? Our very own execution site! How you doing? You alright? You having a good day? Is he any good? Good, top notch, what we like, good. Right, that glass monstrosity there, move out the way then. That glass monstrosity there is not to be confused with a public scaffold outside on Tower Hill. Only 6 people were executed there, but 3 of them were Queens of England, okay? Before we talk about those 3 Queens of England, I'm going to describe some of the buildings that surround us. Now, behind you in that direction is William's Norman Keep, known as the White Tower, the largest in the complex. On orders from William the Conqueror, work began on building it in 1078 under the direction of Gundulf of Beck. It took 20 years to complete. And yes, I did say Gundulf of Beck. I did not say Gandalf the Grey, okay? It wasn't built by a wizard and a really short workforce. Now, the tower stands just over 90 feet tall. Each corner stands a turret. If you look to the top of each of those turrets, you will see a gold-plated crown, beneath which is a weather vane which bears the royal standard. They denote that the tower is still indeed a working royal palace, okay? Although no longer a royal residence. One of our kings and queens lived in there for well over 500 years. The last being King James I of England, King James VI of Scotland in 1603. Now, the royal family lived mainly on the top floor. The floor below was a banqueting hall, council chamber, accommodation for knights and their ladies, and is where the Chapel Royal of St. John the Evangelist is located. The lower floor was occupied by servants and retainers. Now, there is one more floor, which is partly below ground level, where stores and provisions were kept. But parts of that floor had a far more sinister use, as a dungeon and a torture chamber, where the rack and other implements of torture were used on poor, unfortunate souls, such as Guy Fawkes in 1605. Now, Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the Houses in Parliament, okay? He wanted to murder King James I, okay, and all his important ministers. 36 barrels of gunpowder. He was caught red-handed. He was brought back to the Tower of London and he was taken to the King's house, the house in the corner, where he was questioned vigorously. Now, he did not give up the names of his co-conspirators, folks, because he was a soldier, a trained soldier, okay? So, the Privy Council wrote to the King asking for permission to torture him. He had to get a royal warrant, folks, okay? And the King said yes. Of course the King said yes, because he tried to blow him up. So the King said yes, torture him, take him to the White Tower basement and torture him, using the more subtle forms of torture, increasing in severity until he talks, okay? And that's exactly what they did. They took him from the King's house, dragged him across to the White Tower, took him down to the basement, they took his leather moccasins off him, and they tickled his foot with a feather. And he didn't talk. That brave man. And they said, right, what's the date? They said, well, it's November going into December. We said, okay, we'll know what to get him to talk. and they played him some Michael Bublé Christmas tracks. Oh, he still didn't talk, folks. That strong man. I would have sang like a canary. Anyway, so what they did, they put him on the rack and they stretched him until his joints popped out of their sockets, okay? And then he did. He gave up all the names of his co-conspirators. The majority were rounded up, taken to the Old Palace Yard, Westminster, where they were hanged, drawn and quartered. And not a very nice thing to happen, folks. Right, as I've already mentioned it, we'll talk about the King's House, the house in the corner. It is the best preserved Tudor building in the city of London. It dates from 1540. And all the others were destroyed in the Great Fire of 1666, starting about 800 metres that way in a bakery in a lane called Pudding Lane, okay? So, it's the home to the Constable of the Tower of London, who is appointed by His Majesty the King to look after the tower in his stead, okay? As a residence of such a high-ranking man, it has sometimes been used to house some notable prisoners. Now, Queen Catherine Howard spent her last days in there before her execution in 1542. Is anybody here from the great American state of Pennsylvania? Oh, yeah? No?
No, we're from Canada.
You're from Canada. That's close, isn't it? Right, we won't talk about that story then, it's because it's boring unless you come from the state. All right, no, man. Okay, I'll tell you about it. William Penn, okay? William Penn spent about 8 weeks on the top floor of that building for offensive writings against King Charles II. He was only released on condition that he left our country. So he crossed the Atlantic and he founded the Quaker colony of Pennsylvania, which was named in honour of his father. Basically, Pennsylvania is named after a crook. There you go. But hey, isn't everywhere, folks? Come on, yeah? Anyway, so moving to the right, you've got there, that is the Beauchamp Tower, okay? Behind that large arch window was the State Prison Room. If you look closely, you may see ghostly figures wandering around with mobile phones. Anyway, if you go in there today, you'll find over 91 inscriptions carved into the stonework by some of the prisoners kept there. Some of them date back more than 500 years. On this side is the Chapel Royal of St. Peter Adventure that is open for your general perusal. It will close this evening at 5:15, okay? 17:15. 5:15 p.m. However you want to say it, it's going to be the same time, folks. That's when it's closing. I do suggest that you go in there today. There was a beautiful building. It's a working royal chapel. As such, take your hats, headdress off before entering if your religion permits it, folks, okay? The reason you should go in there, it's beautiful, okay? It's nice to get out of the wind and have a little bit of quiet reflection, but also 3 Queens of England are buried within that chapel, yeah? 2 saints of the Roman Catholic faith also still buried within that chapel. Do go in there today. If you do go in there, though, I must warn you, there's a very small threshold step in the doorway, okay? It is this high. Right, it's in a doorway, and it's been there for hundreds of years, okay? It'll be there as you enter, it'll be there while you're inside, and it'll still be there when you leave, okay? And I've just warned you about this very small threshold step in the doorway, and guarantee that at least 3 of you are going to trip over that step. Yes! And the ground beneath you is really, really hard. Looking over on that side, you have the Waterloo Barracks, erected in 1845. It served as accommodation for over 1,000 soldiers of the Tower garrison. It is now the home for the Crown Jewels and the Royal Regalia. It can be entered through an entranceway on the ground level, directly beneath the large gold and black clock. Now look at the Waterloo Barracks. In the centre, you'll find a large gold and black clock. Directly beneath it, on the ground level, there is an entranceway. Written on the entranceway is the Crown Jewels. If we're lucky enough, we may see a person going through that. And there she goes, look. Or they're taking their time. No, they're waiting. No, they're waving. They're trying to make their minds up whether they want to go in or not. Are they going to go in? Are they just go in the building? Go on. Right, folks, they're going to go into the building, all right? And when they get inside, they're going to witness the splendour of the Crown Jewels and the Royal Regalia. Behind you in that direction, there is a signpost. One of the arms on the signpost has a small picture of a crown on it. It also says Crown Jewels, and strangely enough, is pointing from the centre of the Waterloo Barracks, where you'll find a large gold and black clock. Directly beneath it, on the ground level, there is an entranceway. Written on the entranceway is the crown. Everyone know what's happening here. Yeah. So the crown jewels and the royal regalia, and yes, they are real, are inside that building. So, if you like to witness their splendour, then straight after the tour, just go across the square and go into the building. Do not come up to me or any of my colleagues after the tour and ask where they are. You get a left or a right foot answer. Right, let's return our attention to the execution site behind me. Remember, only 6 people executed there, but 3 of them were Queens of England. Just going to talk about those 3 Queens of England. Now, the first Queen of England to be executed there, 1536, was Queen Anne Boleyn. Now, she'd been tried and found guilty on jumped-up charges of adultery, incest and witchcraft. But she was also charged with high treason. It was this that signed her death warrant. The reason? She was overheard talking to a gentleman at court, a musician named Norris. She said to him in a very flirtatious manner, "If my husband was dead, you would have me." She stated that her husband, the King of England, King Henry VIII, as dead. To do that was treason. She had 2 options. She could either be burned at a stake, or she could have her head smitten from her body inside the Tower of London. She chose the latter, but she feared the blocking axe greatly, so she requested that it be carried out in the French manner, with a 2-handed, double-edged sword. Now, a French swordsman was brought over to carry out the execution. Private scaffold was erected just there. No, it wasn't. It was over there, but it's easier for you to look that way, just there. It was a wooden platform with straw and hay strewn across the surface. Now, the executioner stood on top of the scaffold. His sword, though, was hidden behind him. The Queen climbed the steps onto the scaffold. She turned her back to the executioner, got down onto her knees, she bowed her head, and she began to pray. "Lord, have mercy upon my miserable soul." Now, as she did this, the executioner quietly retrieved his sword from its hiding place, and he stood behind the Queen. He said something in the lines of, "Boy, bring me my sword." This startled the Queen from her prayers, and she looked up, and she looked into the gathered crowd, stood as you are now. Now, as she did this movement, her neck went into the correct position for the executioner to strike. And strike he did. One swift movement. He removed her head from her body. Now, he quickly retrieved that severed head, and he held it aloft, and he showed it to the gathered crowd, stood as we are now. As he did this, there was a large gasp from the crowd. Strangely enough, he did this for a second time. Well, there was an even larger gasp from every single person in the crowd. Better. There we go. Right, the reason for this, he was so swift and precise in his task, the head did not know it was separated from the body. So her eyes were still looking into the crowd, and her mouth still wording her final prayer. Documented fact by those that witnessed the execution. The ambassador from Portugal spectated, and he wrote about it in his diaries, folks. So there you go. Right, second Queen of England to be executed there was Queen Catherine Howard. Now, she was executed due to associations with other men, both before and during her marriage to King Henry VIII. But it was to be her alleged affair with Thomas Culpeper, a gentleman at court that was to be her undoing. On the scaffold side, she told her executioner, "I come here to die the Queen of England, but I'd rather die the wife of Thomas Culpeper." An admission of guilt or a sweet declaration of love, we shall never know. Do you think it was a sweet declaration of love? Yeah, of course it was. It's a sweet declaration of love from a dying queen to the only man she had ever truly loved. Now, Thomas Culpeper didn't think so. He was in the back of the crowd going, "No, no!" He didn't last long, folks. He did not last long. Okay. He was actually executed about 3 weeks before she was, but never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So, third final Queen of England to be executed there was the innocent and tragic 16-year-old uncrowned queen of only 9 days, Lady Jane Grey. And she had been a pawn in her struggle for power. After the death of her cousin, King Edward VI, she was declared queen. And she was placed onto the throne by her ambitious relatives, her father and her uncle. Now she reigned for just 9 days, until the rightful heir, Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary, regained the throne by force of arms. Lady Jane and her 19-year-old husband, Lord Guildford Dudley, returned to the Tower of London from their trial at London's Guildhall, sentenced to death for treason. She was imprisoned in number 5, Tower Green, second green door along. From there, she watched from the upper window as her young husband was dragged from the Beauchamp Tower to his execution on Tower Hill. An hour later, she would still be gazing through that window, and she would see his headless body being brought back in a handcart for burial in that chapel. But if that wasn't anguish enough for her, she must have witnessed the carpenters preparing her own scaffold site on that very spot for her own execution later that same fateful day, the 12th of February, 1554. They're pretty sad stories to leave you with, folks. And I don't want you to walk away from here miserable because you're on holiday. Yay! Yeah. Good for you, yeah. I want you to walk away from here smiling. So I'm going to finish by talking to you about my favourite subject. Me! Thank you. Not me, folks, not me. Yeoman Warders. Now, I'm one of 35 Yeoman Warders that live and work at the Tower of London, okay? But to become one of us, you have to meet 3 very specific criteria. 1, you have to have a magnificent beard. 2, you have to be extremely handsome. And 3, you have to be at least 6 foot tall. Right, they're the wrong things, obviously, okay? Right, 1, you have to have served in His Majesty's Armed Forces for at least 22 years, okay? That is either the Royal Navy, Royal Marines, the Army, or the Royal Air Force. Now, 2, you have to have reached the rank of a warrant officer, Sergeant Major. I was a warrant officer in the British Army in the Royal Artillery, okay? And 3, you have to have the long service and good conduct medal, which is the purple ribbon at the end. That is for 15 or so years of exemplary honourable service. We like to say 15 years of not getting caught for any crime. Once you have those 3 things and a position becomes available, you can apply. And if you're fortunate enough to get chosen, you get to become a Yeoman Warder of His Majesty's Royal Palace Fortress, the Tower of London. You get to live here with your family. But better than that, you get to wear this magnificent uniform. And it's a uniform, folks. Wait for it. And it's a uniform, folks, okay? It's not an outfit. And it's certainly not a costume. We are not actors. It is a uniform based on a Tudor design that was worn underneath armour. On the front is the royal cipher. King's crown, Carolus, Tertius, Rex. King Charles III in Latin. We belong to His Majesty, okay? Another question you might be asking yourselves, why do they call you Beefeaters, yeah? Yeah, we don't know! Stop asking us the question! It's a nickname! It was given to us hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It just stuck. Nobody really knows where it comes from. There are lots of different theories and reasons why people think we're called Beefeaters. Nobody actually knows for sure, folks, okay? Okay, one reason is, when we were first formed, okay, under Henry VII, first Tudor king, happened today, all right? When we were first formed, we were the personal bodyguards to the king, all right? Now, we still carry out that role. We are the sovereign's ceremonial bodyguard, okay? You may have seen us guarding our dearly departed Queen Elizabeth II when she lay in state at the Palace of Westminster, at each corner of the coffin in our red state uniforms, okay? we also guarded the King and Queen, Our Majesties, during the coronation, all right, on the procession and at Westminster Abbey. So we still carry that role. Back then, though, we were the personal bodyguards. Now, to keep us fit, strong, healthy, and able to protect them, they gave us a daily ration of meat, okay? Meat back then was very expensive, okay? Usually just for royalty and nobility. So we were very privileged in getting part paid in that manner. Now, people outside, they found out about this. They couldn't get hold of good food like that, okay? So they became jealous. And when they saw us outside in our uniforms, they used to call us names. It used to hurt our feelings. They used to say things like, "Ugh, look at those greedy beefeaters with their yummy food, mumbo grumbo. Ugh, look at those handsome beefeaters with their yummy food." Yeah, that's what I used to say, folks, all right? Now, our official title is this. I'm going to say it, okay? You're going to repeat it, and if anybody gets it wrong, we're going back to the start, okay? Right, here we go. Are you ready for this? Ready. Are you ready? Yeoman Warder of His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress, Tower of London, Sovereign's Bodyguard, Yeoman of the Guard, and Extraordinary. Got it? Exactly what I'll just say beefy, it's a lot easier, isn't it? Okay? Right, this almost brings me to the end, folks. I do hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've learned a bit of the history of this magnificent Royal Palace and Fortress. But before I send you on your way to the Crown Jewels, and you all know where they are, don't you? I'd like to thank each and every one of you today for doing your part. You folks coming in to visit us, yes, help us keep the tower in the great condition it's in. That building in the centre alone has been standing for nearly 1,000 years, folks. We'd love it to stand for 1,000 years more. So truly, truly, folks, thank you for visiting today, okay? Now, if you do have any burning questions, I'm going to be staying here for a nanosecond after the tour. Or you could just ask any one of my colleagues around the tower, okay? If you've enjoyed the tour, then please feel free to cheer and clap. Now go away!